today we're doing something a little bit different. We're checking out the Canon R5, but with an EF lens, specifically the 100 to 400mm lens, which, whoo, is quite the lens. We're going to talk about the adapter, we're going to talk about the whole kit. Let's get into it. So like I mentioned in the intro, we've got the Canon EF 100 to 400mm lens on the front of the R5. Now they are both beautiful bits of equipment. This is a great lens for wildlife, sports, all kinds of stuff. I've used this loads for, landscape, even a bit of portrait, loads of different things. And the R5 is a fantastic camera. I think we all know that. I think we all get that. And obviously I've got a mount adapter in the middle there. And that's the first thing I want to talk about. It might not sound that interesting, but if you've ever looked at an RF mount adapter so that you can put EF lenses on an RF mount, there's actually a few different options. And this one here is the one that has the built-in ND filter actually in the mount adapter. It's a variable ND filter as well. And I can't even tell you how awesome that is. Now, if you're a videographer, that is music to your ears. You don't have to have all the different ND filters for the front of your lenses because it's all just here. Every lens that you put on the front of this camera with this mount adapter on has a variable ND filter ready to go. And it works so well. There is actually just a little wheel on the side to increase or decrease how dark you want it to be. And I can't tell you, it's so good. I'm gonna throw up some video footage right now so you can see me kind of playing around with this, but it just makes it incredibly easy. If you want to do video and you want to control your exposure without adjusting the shutter speed and all that kind of stuff, super easy. If you want to do long exposure stuff, this has made me think about long exposure more than I've thought about it for ages because it's so easy to just do it. You don't have to have the ND filter with you because it's in the mount adapter. You don't have to think about putting it on, setting it all up. It's all ready to go. So that is a massive plus. But what about the lens and the camera itself? Well, I've been testing this out for a few different things, right? I love this lens just in general. I think 100 to 400 is such a useful focal range to be playing around with. Obviously it lends itself really well to wildlife photography. Obviously it lends itself really well to sports as well. So I've been testing that out a little bit, but something which I don't think this kind of lens is used enough for is actually getting close up to stuff like insects, small things that you'd normally use a macro lens for. This actually can give you some really good image quality for that kind of thing. So I've been testing it out for a little bit of that. Now, the thing I was most interested to see was how the autofocus would work with the R5 and this lens. Now, so far, I've been doing a bunch of kind of bugs and insects. I've been doing a little bit of wildlife down by the lake here, this woods. I've been doing a few things. Admittedly, it's ducks, it's seagulls, it's stuff like that. So not necessarily the most exciting, but it gives me a great opportunity to test out the autofocus. And so far, this has not let me down even once. And that's allowing the camera to set where I'm focusing. Now, obviously with the R5, you can flip open the nice little touchscreen, select a point, and it'll actually track that point as well. I have been doing that both with insects, amazingly, I couldn't believe that worked, and with birds. So far, again, no issues. So as far as I'm concerned, this has been an extremely nice experience shooting with this setup. Now, in terms of tracking, obviously I wanted to try some birds in flight because that'd be a big thing with a lens like this. Obviously sports and people running, cycling, whatever it might be, really handy as well. I managed to get a few birds in flight. Any errors tended to come from me rather than the autofocus. Autofocus was able to keep up. I didn't have any issues with that. Video-wise, great as well. And in terms of image quality, all the stuff I've been able to shoot so far has looked great. Now, I'm not particularly surprised, to be honest. This lens has some great glass in there. It is a beautiful lens for all kinds of different things, and the resolution of the R5 really shows that off. So one other thing I was concerned was that perhaps this lens wouldn't be able to keep up with the higher resolution of the R5, but it absolutely does. It's not a problem at all. So in terms of sports and wildlife and stuff like this is a great option. Obviously there's the native RF lenses, and that's going to work really, really well. That's going to be really nice. I haven't had a proper chance to test that out yet. I would love to, but in the meantime, you'd be, absolutely fine with a setup like this. So if you do sport photography, you do wildlife photography, this is absolutely going to be a good one. Now, in terms of weight and stuff like this, I love the feel of the R5 anyway. I think it's a lovely feeling camera. This grip is nice and deep. This isn't light, right? I wouldn't shoot one-handed, but I can carry it around one-handed while I'm walking around, two-hand shooting. Almost everything I shot was handheld, apart from a couple of shots I did on a tripod because I wanted to test out a bit of long exposure because of that ND filter built into the mount adapter. actually the whole system is, you know, it's not light, like I say, but you wouldn't really expect it to be. This is a 100-400L lens, you know, this is a good, solid lens. And the L lenses for Canon tend to be able to take a bit of punishment. So they're built very, very well. And this is certainly no different. Something I've just noticed that I literally, as we're filming this, I've just seen, there's a control here for how smooth and tight the zoom ring is on this lens, which I had no idea was a thing. I had recently seen that on a Sigma lens, and it's the first time I'd noticed it, but it's actually on this lens, and I've used this lens loads of times and never seen that. That's a very nice little addition. So if you're thinking to yourself, okay, I've got an R5 or an R6, right? And I want to get some EF lenses, or I've got some EF lenses, but I'm nervous about how they're going to perform on these cameras. Well, I can tell you right now, that's absolutely the boat I was in as well. I was concerned about how they perform because they're never quite the same as a native lens. And especially with something like the R5, you know, you're buying that camera for the speed, you know, for the autofocus, for the video performance. You're going to want to be shooting, you know, high speed continuous shooting, video 8K, all that kind of stuff. So you want to make sure that the lens is going to keep up. And I've got to say, I was concerned that that wouldn't be possible considering the capabilities of the R5, you know, the high resolution, super fast shooting. But I've got to say, I am very pleasantly surprised at how this has performed. I think that this is an absolutely, not just usable, I hesitate to just use the word usable, but this is a setup I would absolutely go for. If I owned an R5 and I wanted to do a good lens for kind of wildlife sport, something like that, or even just, you know, this, to be honest, this has a lot of uses outside wildlife and sport. I know it's, you know, probably labeled with kind of wildlife and sport, but landscape, massively for landscape, portrait, there's a lot that you can do with this. And it's absolutely a lens I would consider getting for an RF mount camera like the R5, the R6, anything like that. If you have any questions or any thoughts, I'd love to hear them down in the comments below. Of course, if you already have a setup like this, I'd love to hear what you think down in the comments as well. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. Of course, there's a full list of all the equipment used, and that basically means an R5, the mount adapter with the neutral density filter, the ND variable filter, and of course the EF 100-400mm lens down in the description so you can go and check that out. I will see you in the next video, and as always, thanks for watching.